Well, I'd like to say good morning, but it doesn't feel like a good morning. You're with Michael Crosby, running for POTUS 2024. Well, I'm going over the morning items that I need to be taking care of. And basically, an entire convoy, a whole fleet of mobile broadcast RVs has been lost due to the actions of people of state government in California. The failure of the Secretary of State of California to address the complaints respective to my request is inexcusable. In effect, the Secretary of State of California, Shirley Weber, has rigged an entire election, blacklisting a candidate. She had help. There are other participants. Julie Sue was also a participant. Kamala Harris was also a participant because of her dereliction of duty, and there's a long series of arguments that explain her participation or lack of participation, her failure to act, to do what was necessary when requested in the past, respective to the necessary needed prosecutions of state employees. There seems to be just more than confusion when you have state employees, representatives of the state, that have violated their constitutional oath, violated the trust of the voters when they're supposed to be protecting the voters. They're supposed to be protecting the Constitution of the United States. They're supposed to be protecting the process of elections. They're supposed to be protecting candidates. But as it is right now, the truth of the entire matter is they haven't done that. They haven't done that at all. The California special recall gubernatorial election basically had blacklisting. They blacklisted a candidate called Michael Crosby from being on the ballot. Now, you can argue the logic of statistical realities, but the reality is that the recall petition did make its number of signatures to activate a recall election. So when we look at the situation, myself as a candidate, and I was already a pre-declared candidate for both governor, for the governor cycle, and for the United States presidency. But the special election was special. The special election had some confusion. As a petitioner, I was approached by parties approximately 3 weeks after Newsom had got into office. And these parties approached me and explained that they had a recall petition that they wanted circulated. The parties explained the petition. I asked questions about the petition. That petition in my view, had parties misrepresent several facts. As I recall, just recalling without getting to my original, because the original copies of the material in question have been stolen. And the Secretary of State's office has refused to assist in the recovery of those documents. Now, the interesting thing is that particular document that I was approached on was backed by certain people. It was written by certain people, and there was a problem. The problem was that the parties representing the document, in my view, did not explain the document properly in certain sections. As I recall, there were 3 sections that I felt that they misrepresented what the document was saying, and I felt that they had lied to me about the material, and that particular document was making a false claim at the time, that it was holding Governor Newsom responsible for something that wasn't his problem. He was only in office for about 3 weeks at that time, and they were holding him responsible for items he had nothing to do with. And I brought that to the attention that was in the document, and I says, well, you really can't do that. That's not a fair thing to put forward. He was not the person who wrote or invented these items, nor put them forward, and you're holding him responsible for them. So that particular, I'll just tell you, that particular petition did not pass. That particular petition did not get enough signatures. That particular petition faded away, and others came in place. The problem that I did have is that the reoccurring petitions seem to have the same people in backing behind them, reasserting. And I had a problem that if I felt that the people beginning that represented the document were misrepresenting it, which was not exactly the people who wrote the petition, that there was a serious problem of how the explanations of the material were being handled and going down through the line from the origin sponsors. And there was write-up material that I thought was inconsistent with a responsible request. So I did not carry the petition. I refused to carry the petition. And there was also no pay offered for the carrying of that petition. That petition ended up fading away, and others came forward. Because the same people were connected to the origin, my decision was that they weren't paying for the petition to be circulated, and there was clear reason for me to believe that someplace in there that somebody did not properly write up that request and were asking things that I felt were unreasonable. So I did not carry any of the petitions. I never accepted or got any signatures for those petitions. As it was, my personal research indicated that Governor Newsom would get 58 to 60% of the vote of people that would basically sign on the portion of the measure once on the ballot and disapprove of it. In other words, they would give Governor Newsom a positive vote at 58 to 60%. Now, the interesting thing is, regardless of the theoretical territory, there was a just-in-case territory. The just-in-case territory is for backup. The backup is that in the event that the governor would have been recalled, then additional selections for governor would apply. Therefore, there was a gubernatorial listing. And that would be for a short-term governor ticket, so to speak. And I was applying for that. I felt that there was other issues, such as they were charging too much because the position was not a full number of years. Therefore, they needed to prorate the fee. But that having been said, I was perfectly willing to pay the ballot fee. However, there was a small problem. The small problem is that I was under attack as a candidate financially. The multiple avenue areas of gig work and different types of intermittent, seasonal, nonprofit work, which effectively funded the nonprofit, the operations, my expenses, basically could not be achieved because they were ordered shut down and we had stay-at-home orders in place. This affected, again, all of the different areas because sometimes there would be seasonally active items, as I was also a signature gatherer, and I would go to populous areas to get signatures. That's how you do it. You can go door to door, but you're not going to get very many signatures if you go door to door. That's the reality of it. That's the reality of it. If you want to press the big numbers, the only way to do that effectively is to go to market congregating areas. But the stay-at-home orders and shutdown orders and stay-at-home orders basically shut down many types of businesses. And many types of businesses were given documents stating that no unnecessary items would be allowed. And there were items posted at markets. Petitioners were not allowed to gather petitions. They were deemed to be unnecessary items. Talks with attorneys had them stating you cannot violate those shutdown orders or the nonprofit can get a health and safety violation, which would be catastrophic to a nonprofit. So there's different complexities of how that works out. Now, I could still independently go out and collect signatures. The problem is finding a criteria that would possibly work, which seemed to be virtually impossible for any of the petitions to be able to effectively get signatures that would make it worth doing, especially since basically at the time there were almost no cash pay items. The entire operation was 100% commissioned item. So no signatures, no pay. Now, some people were offering pay in certain areas eventually. And when I was basically using other people, training other people in the team in the prior season, I did pay people, I supplemented people to make sure that they got their basic minimum amount of money for their effort, hourly effort. So, something that I did. So, there are a lot of hidden expenses to running petitions sometimes, however, they could still be very lucrative. Now, this having been said, that puts out the honesty of part of the situation. Again, the legal situation involving the legal aspects is that it would be illegal, not just inappropriate, but illegal for me to utilize the nonprofit resources respective to being able to basically operate in any way to get to marketplace access of people, basically, since those were all effectively shut down. So, moving along to a slightly different area here, my strategy was that running for governor did have the long shot possibility that the recall might go through and I could get elected. The sampling and the demographic of what I was left with was a strategy that I could use the fleet, the convoy of archive vehicles for the campaign. So these campaign vehicles, which actually should have been 18, but I felt that just activating for the gubernatorial cycle, activating 12 of them would have been sufficient to effectively have 1 million people a day exposed to the name if they were simply traveling on the freeway system in the certain crowded areas in California. That would be, for instance, Los Angeles. So they could go to effective areas where there were certain areas where you could show up and you could do audio transmissions, and you could do Wi-Fi transmissions. You could do projections of projectors in the evening onto the sides of buildings and walls and whatnot. You could have a space setting where you could have some people participate, but you'd have to control the number of people, approaches, whatnot. That was a bit, it was doable, but it was a bit, a bit awkward. It's you're not going to necessarily get the volume effect. The best effect would simply be having people noticing your name on the RVs, on the campaign vehicles, as they would drive up and down the freeway going to and from work and see, oh my goodness, this guy Michael Crosby is running for office. And then notice another vehicle and another vehicle and then another vehicle and another vehicle. And, pretty easily, it would have been easy for people to see 7 or 8 of them going to and from work on certain lines at certain times of the day. So people's impression would be, yeah, I guess this guy's running for office. Wow, look at all of these vehicles with his name on the side. So this, of course, would be able to get people to the website. This would have people basically being able to also see the other areas of the websites that would gateway them to other sectional areas. Now, being on the ballot, also I would be able to have the websites listed. So this was important, but the state of California, the Secretary of State, Shirley Weber, did not want to honor the money that the state of California owed me so I could get on the ballot. Now, Julie Sue was blacklisting me denying monies that I was owed, but Congress clearly had ordered those monies paid. So when I sent in various complaints and eventually a demand for action this day to Shirley Weber, she respectively did not process the item. At no point in time can I ever see that she ever contacted me or attempt to resolve the situation. This effectively means that she was blacklisting a candidate's demand for assistance that was under attack by another government entity. A situation that involved clear document verification in their office. Literally. The other previous petitions that I had circulated of various causes had my signature on many of these documents, certifying that I witnessed people sign these documents and I certified these signatures, and they were submitted. These documents were submitted to the state, to the Secretary of State's office. So the Secretary of State was refusing to check official documents to verify the fact on these petitions, which would verify that, yes, I did gig work and therefore was guaranteed compensation ordered by Congress. Thus, the money situation kept growing and growing. Eventually, we got to the point where it was around $90,000. COVID lasted quite a long time, and in many ways it still goes, but people have kind of forgotten COVID. Has a different priority set now. We also have vaccines, and we pretty much know how to cure, well, many of the cases, no guarantees, people still die. But effectively, what we have is a blacklisting by multiple parties, clearly by Julie Sue and assisted by Shirley Weber, who is in multiple areas of violations of the law. There's a problem with complaining to the people who are supposed to be in charge with ultimately protecting the process of elections. How do you complain to people about blacklisting when they're the people committing the blacklisting? It's a serious problem. Now, into this, there is also the factor of violence. Insurrection, which has not been resolved, extreme amounts of violence coming in repeatedly on my person, a definite RICO situation, multiple players. Now, respective to the state of California, there's more to it than that, because the period that people know as January 6th is a culmination. It's something that's part of a mood that has been growing subfactionally for quite some time. It's been evolving. So you have negative participants throughout. And of course there are those people who would like to grab hold of various subfactional interests and manipulate them. The situation dating back prior deals with other election periods in which I was a candidate, even a filed candidate, and I was getting harassed by police officers who issued completely erroneous tickets. Now, being blacklisted by the state of California by them first committing felonies by posting information that's erroneous into government-owned computers, that's a felony, then transmitting that information, that's a felony, to various parties, and then transmitting it across state lines, which of course also is a felony. It's an additional felony to transmit across state lines erroneous information, especially in government computers. Now, the thing is that the state of Arkansas reviewed this main citation and found it to be, well, completely erroneous, full of lies. In fact, the write-up is directly against the electronic supplied request. When the officer put in the request, the actual logs for information that were transmitted via Arkansas, supplying the exact information. The officer lied about the fact that he was supplied information from the state of Arkansas. Then he proceeded to make a completely erroneous citation, completely different, a complete set of lies, diabolically against the information that was provided when clear receipt of 4 or 5 items was clearly there. So this guy's going to do this big long write-up on a ticket that's completely erroneous, which the state kept refusing to pull off the books. The repeated items dealing with the state would have them play this strange game where the prosecutors, talking to the prosecutorial offices about the citation over the telephone. Even I believe we sent in some written complaints stating, look, it is federal law that you have to intake any form of evidence or information being supplied by a candidate, respective to any legal situation. It's the law. Well, the parties reviewed by telephone and with computer records. It's very simple. You don't have to reveal any information to the voice on this side. I'm telling you, what you do is you go into the computer and you check these records. And as you check these records, you will see that these records do not match the citation, and that citation is completely erroneous. So being dealt with people who end up stating multiple things that are confusing, among them, well, we'll pull the item off the book. We won't move forward with prosecution. But my point goes beyond that, saying that's not good enough. This officer has committed multiple felonies, and they have violated the law in various areas to the tune of 70 years in a federal penitentiary, because these are assaults upon a candidate. Now, this little game that the state of California repeatedly would put, saying, okay, well, we'll pull it off the books, has an on-again, off-again situation of not prosecuting. But then apparently the mistake stated is, oh, well, we had an analyst come through and saw an item that they thought was not processed, so they reposted the item to be active in the computer system. Okay, look, that is not acceptable once again, because originally I was very clear about the point that we were demanding full prosecution of the officer in question that was committing attacks and completely developing and running forward with erroneous information, that these were serious felonies and the party had to be prosecuted. These parties refused to prosecute. They continued to, in effect, aid and abet these individuals with continuing an attack against a candidate. That is a felony. Now, technically, because they're interfering, that is also listed in the Constitution and Articles of the United States as an attack upon a candidate. And if there's associations to those parties to other candidate camps, they are disqualifying their player. Now, this situation deals with the on-again, off-again game that they would keep playing, as it became very problematic to have to keep calling these people up going, what are you doing? Oh, an analyst apparently noticed this was inactive. We weren't going to prosecute it. And then they reactivated onto the books. What are you doing? What are you doing? I wanted to prosecute. Why are you reactivating this? The FBI is brought into a situation live. They're online. They're on the phone. They're accessing computers. Their computer logs confirm that they inspected material and looked at it and said, no, this information is completely erroneous. Do not harass this man. Give this man back his driver's license. Release his vehicle free of charge, effective immediately, or I will come down and arrest you. Because there is no proof or evidence whatsoever to the claim that you are making, officer. Now, these repeated, inexcusable, reoccurring references of multiple attacks against a candidate are acts of war. They are defined as acts of war by the Articles of the United States. The state of California has intentionally acted out repeatedly in acts of war against the candidate in violation of the Constitution of the United States. At this part, through no part of my own, the state of California has declared war repeatedly on a candidate. A state of war now exists in the United States as the state of California is moving forward erroneous characters that are disqualified from the process of election, notably Kamala Harris, as well as the Secretary of State, Shirley Weber, and perpetuating and refusing to arrest Julie Su. Again, I call for the arrest of all parties, effective immediately. I call for sanity. I call for sanity. I call for the state of California to stand down and cease and desist their acts of war against the candidate. I demand full and complete immediate compensation this day, this hour, to restore 18 mobile broadcast RV vehicles so that I may resume my election bid and that I may move forward with adequate funding to be able to restore and repair the lost archive due to their actions, and proceed forward with additional investigation and prosecutions as needed. I also require the funding to notify every voter in the state of California of exactly the conduct of these various parties. This effectively, in total, equals the damage of the archive at a tune of $2.8 billion done to archival holdings. I will please have noted here that the Constitution of the United States basically states that anybody responsible for aiding, abetting, leading to, or participating in any way, shape, or form, or causing, is basically responsible for the destruction and damage to an archive, as well as artifacts. Those come with a mandatory death penalty area, and I'm demanding that the full constitutional contact be basically fulfilled. That means that these parties that I'm calling for arrest, that I'm demanding their full prosecution and the death penalty to be enforced. I demand immediate action this day, from the Secretary of State's office. I'm not sure how that works out, since the Secretary of State's office seems to repeatedly be incompetent of conducting themselves properly. And they make repeatedly dumb mistakes, as like referring certain people, saying, well, why don't you use these authorities in these areas? I said, well, it's interesting because they're under investigation because they're associated with the January 6th attacks. Hello? And oh, by the way, they're also the main suspects connected to direct violent attacks against me. And we have verified some of those additional attacks. So when you have the FBI on the phone telling them, do not harass this candidate, that this information electronically is erroneous, and these people are stealing my driver's license, stealing my photo ID so I can't do banking, stranding me without capabilities, falsely forcing and charging me, falsely taking vehicles away from me. This must stop. These attacks must stop. These acts of war must stop. These parties must be taken into custody. They must be prosecuted. We must restore the process of election to the United States. My name is Michael Crosby, candidate for POTUS 2024.